Hi, and welcome to this tutorial where we're going to explore a few different ways that we can write subqueries. So this tutorial is part of a series of videos where we're going to look at the basics of writing SQL, and we're going to use SQL Server as our platform to do that. If you would like a full list of all the videos in this series, then you can either subscribe and find the playlist, or you can go to the website www.padsresearch.co.uk. That stands for Physics, Aviation and Data Science. So let's start by thinking about what a subquery is. Well, we have our main query. So if we have an example here, we have a query that says we would like to select some data from a particular table. And in this case, it's going to be the business entity contact. So that is our main query. So a subquery is a nested query. It's a secondary query that we have inside our other query. And there's a few different places that we can place that query. Now, in this example here, we're going to use it in the where clause. So we want to produce a list. So you can see we have a query here that says, I want to get all the contact types where the name is like A. And if we run that, then this will bring back a list of contact type IDs of 1 to 3. And this will say that we want all of these records where the contact type ID is inside this list. And you can see that we've used the open and close brackets, and then we've got our subquery here, which is within the where clause. So that's quite a common and useful way of using a subquery. Now, the next type of subquery we can use to effectively join two sets of data together. So in this case, we've got our main query on the outside here where we're selecting some data. We're selecting product ID and name from the product table, and we've aliased it as P, so we can always refer to this particular table as P. And then we have another query which appears to be another column item, and we're going to call this work order count. Now you can see we've got an open and closed bracket, so we can put a subquery in the middle of that. Now this one's a little bit interesting because you can see that we've got this select statement from the work order table, and we've aliased it work order. And in order to join this work order table to this products table, we're actually going to put a join here in the where clause where we say the WO, or the work order product ID, has got to match the product ID. And in that way it joins only the records for work order to be linked to the relevant product records. And you can see that we do that by saying that one product ID has got to equal the other product ID. We've sort of got this inner and outer table. Now, when we put a select query within a column like we do here, so we've got product ID, name, and then we've got this entire column called work order count, it can only return one record that is relevant to the row. So we couldn't return like a whole set of records here for each row. It only needs to be able to return one value. And in this case, it's only going to return the count. Now, this is a type of subquery that I would not recommend you actually use, although it is taught on the early stages. There's much better ways of joining two sets of data together. So I would tend to try and avoid putting in a link between two tables or a join between two tables in a subquery like this, where we've got the ID from the subquery linking to the ID of the main query. If you want to link various different tables together, then check out my videos on how to join data, and I'll put a link to that at the end of the video. Okay, the next type of subquery is generally more useful, and you can see we're going to select some data from, but rather than selecting data from a table, we're going to select data from a subquery. So to do that, we have select star from, then we have an open and close bracket, and everything in these two brackets is going to contain our subquery, and we're going to give it an alias name of T, so we can always refer to everything in here. We can treat it as a table, or the results as a table, and we can refer to it as T from our main query. So this is the subquery here. We're going to select some data from location, and we're going to filter for the names that are like paint. So this can be useful if you have some complex operations and you need to split it out. So you might need to put one set of logic on the inside, so we have that as a subquery, and then you might do some further calculations with it on the outside. So this is a type of subquery that can be useful in quite a few circumstances. So if we select this and run it, then we can see that we've got the location ID, the name, so it's all these columns that we've had from the inner query are now appearing in the outer query because it's treating this effectively as a table. There are a few particular instances where this can be quite useful. So here's an example here where we've got our subquery. So it's selecting some data from, and then we've got our subquery here. Now, what we're doing here is we're taking the max of an average. Now, you can't combine aggregate functions together, so I couldn't put max and then put the average value inside that. You can only do this type of thing if you first of all figure out the average and then figure out the maximum value. So that's why we're doing that here. We're first of all figuring out the average value of the total due from the sales order header. So that will bring up back our average. If we run that, then you can see that these are all our average values. And if you want to find the maximum of all these averages, then we can run our main query here. Let's run that. And you can see now it's found the maximum, and we've called it the highest average. So in order to do this type of thing, you need to do a subquery and you need to first find the average and then apply your secondary aggregate function. So there are lots of other things we can do with subqueries, and they can get quite complicated. If you are interested in looking at more examples or looking at some more advanced features of SQL, then I do have another course called a complete course in SQL with SQL Server, and I'll put a link to that at the end of the video. You can also find it on my website, www.padsresearch.co.uk. In the next video, we're going to have a look at how we can group data by using the group by statement.